Hello and welcome to the Final Frontiersmen, a YouTube channel about all things Trek with a heavy focus on the Star Trek Adventures role-playing game. I'm your host Bill, and today we are going to review the Star Trek Adventures animated series supplemental guide. This year is the 50th anniversary of Star Trek the Animated Series, which continued the 4th and 5th year of Kirk's 5-year mission that started in the original series. And this guide brings a lot of the unique and colorful material that is found in the, I think, 2 seasons of that show into the Star Trek Adventures role-playing game. There's a lot of fun stuff to be found inside this guide, so it should be a pretty quick run to go through and give you an idea of what you're going to find here. As always, for our reviews, we have our alert system: yellow for things of interest, red alert for the great things that we love, and the rarely used black alert for the game changers, the really amazing things. So without further ado, let me jump into my small window down below, and let's take a look at what we can find inside the Star Trek Adventures animated series supplemental guide. So starting off, Chapter 1, that's a good place to start, I prefer it. Chapter 1 is the introduction to the book, but I think unlike most of the other books in the line of Star Trek Adventures, there's not a lot of explanation on what's coming in the book. Instead, it jumps straight into the characters. So you get all of the main characters, which have been seen before in the original series character PDF pack, which I reviewed on the channel before. However, there's some slight changes to a few of the characters. So if you don't have that pack, you get them all again, but there are some slight changes to reflect how values may have changed over the course of the series, including now the animated series. So not huge changes. The stats, I believe, are all identical. So if you do have the original series character pack, character PDF, then there's very little change between the two sets. However, the characters that appear in Chapter 1 are Kirk, Spock, McCoy, Scotty, Sulu, Uhura, Chapel, Eric's, and Mares. Of course, Eric's and Mares are 2 new characters that joined the Enterprise in the 4th and 5th year. 2 new species that weren't seen in the original series, and really because they couldn't. They don't have the budget for aliens like this. They are very different aliens. Cation for Mares and Edogian, I believe, for Eric's. They will appear also, or their species will appear later in the book. As I said, there's updated entries. These entries are written from the perspective of Lieutenant Eric's. I think he's a lieutenant. Oh my god. From Eric's on the ship. So he's giving his impression of the crew as part of the dossier. The ones who have the slight value changes are Kirk, Spock, and Uhura. Those 3 have one different value than what appears earlier in the character PDFs, but also Uhura has a different talent as well. She has a talent swapped out. Otherwise, I believe the main characters are still the same. Nurse Chapel, I don't recall if she appeared in the original series character pack as a main character. She may have, but otherwise, yeah, you got the same crew. But now they are here for you to use in animated form. So there you go. Aside from that, one thing I did notice is Lieutenant Eric's has a talent called Many Hands. Many Hands talent. With the Edogians, they already appeared earlier in... Goodness, which book was that? Was that Lower Decks? But I believe Alpha Quadrant, and it was listed as multitasking. And I believe later in this guide, also when they have the species for the life path of the Edogian, that same talent appears again as multitasking. So it's interesting that it has a different name on Lieutenant Eric's character, but it's the same talent. So there you go. Chapter 2. So going into Chapter 2, Chapter 2 is additional crew members. So it's kind of like supporting characters or NPCs you could have fleshing out on the ship, but the characters are, and I might get the pronunciation wrong on all of them, so bear with me. There is Lieutenant Gabler, Lieutenant Ann Norrid, Ensign Walking Bear, Lieutenant Clayton, Lieutenant Commander Tom Markle, Lieutenant Randy Bryce, Lieutenant Nancy Rudolph, Captain O'Shea, Bob Wesley, and Alik Om. So those are characters who appeared throughout episodes of the animated series, and now you have them to use as NPCs or even supporting characters in the game. It's a very short chapter. It's a very direct chapter. So additional crew members, it's called. That's chapter 2. Already chapter 3. Chapter 3 is called New Life and New Civilizations. These are the new worlds introduced throughout the animated series, and some of them are really interesting, some of them are fascinating. I'm not going to get into the details of what makes each world unique. If you haven't seen the animated series, then it's worth it to get this book to find some really interesting planets for yourself. So no spoilers for that, but the worlds that appear here, and again, if you're familiar, you may know these worlds already. I'm going to mess them up again, but there's Argo, Lactra 7, the Mad Planet, Mantilles, maybe? I haven't seen that episode, so I don't know. Magus 2 as in TU. Again, probably slaughtering the pronunciation. Phylos and Pandro. So you got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 new worlds, I believe. And again, some of them are really unique, really fascinating. I mean, one's called the Mad Planet. What else are you going to expect there? So that is New Life, New Civilizations. Very easy reference, easy to pull some worlds out for your game. There you go. Chapter 4. Chapter 4 is Life Path Operations, and I am or Life Path Options, not Operation. I'm going to give this chapter a red alert. This has information not just on the new species you could play as, but the beginning also has information or advice on how you can incorporate these animated series characters. Some of them are very different from what we've seen earlier in other guides and in the live action series. So it gives you advice on how to play them in Star Trek Adventures or how to use them smoothly into Star Trek Adventures. It's not difficult, but it's still good advice to use for, I was going to say adapting, but for bringing in these kind of characters. The new races are the Aquan, the Aurelians, the bird people, the Caitians, the cat people, Idosians with 3 legs and 3 arms, the Kzinti, which the Kzinti appeared as an NPC in the Lower Decks book, and that NPC also, and there was a very brief guide of how you could maybe use Kzinti as a life path, but this is a full life path option. That Kzinti had talents, that NPC in Lower Decks had talents, but those talents are not the same ones that are available for the Kzinti race here. So if you want a broader range of talents for Kzinti, you might want to look at that entry in the Lower Decks book. Moving on. Pandronian, which also we saw in the Lower Decks episode. They brought that back. Phylosian, I'm probably saying it wrong. Score, the more aggressive flying species offshoot of the Aurelians. So you might have noticed that Aurelian, Caitian, and Idosian, I believe those 3 already appeared in the Alpha Quadrant guidebook. But as they debuted in the animated series, I believe Modiphius brought them all back to have a complete collection, complete set for this supplemental guide. So those ones have appeared before, but the rest of them are brand new and full-fledged life path options. So it's pretty cool. And again, remember what I said about the Kzinti. You might want to look at the NPC that appears in Lower Decks, as the talents, the special abilities it has are different than what are available for the species here. So stand down, red alert. let's go chapter 5. Chapter 5 is equipment and gear. There's some interesting equipment introduced in the animated series. The life support belt, which is kind of a predecessor to the personal force field, and used for extravehicular walking. So when you leave the starship, if you can't wear the bulky environmental suit, there is this belt that provides a safety force field around you. Very interesting. There's the automated bridge defense system. It kind of looks like something out of Battlestar Galactica, but it's basically that. It's an automated turret defense system built onto the bridge. Pretty different from the stuff we're used to on Star Trek, but there you go. You have that option in the game now. There's the phaser bore for mining. So it looks kind of like a Type 3 phaser, but it's for boring through different types of material, and you can adjust this phaser bore to match the harmony or frequency, whatever, of the various materials you want to bore through. And the telefocals Mark 1, which are basically kind of like binoculars. So you get a little bit of wild and unusual technology to add into your game that has not appeared elsewhere. Chapter 5, equipment and gear. That brings us to Chapter 6 is science and spatial phenomena. This is, unsurprisingly, some of the strange spatial phenomena that was encountered in the animated series. You have only 3 options. It's hypergravity, pocket universe, and the Dramia Aurora. Now, there's only 3 of them, which to me is a little disappointing because this stuff is some of my favorite things and items to look for when I get a new Star Trek Adventures guide. Like I love, like in Shackleton Expanse, there's so much about spatial phenomena written by Aaron Paulier. He gives so much science information that you could use in Star Trek Adventures animated series. Clearly not too many in its very short run, but there were some very interesting points made about these 3 entries here. Pocket Universe, I probably could use this information earlier before my players went into Pocket Universe, but it's pretty similar anyhow, so I don't think I strayed too far from it. It was interesting. I just wish that there was more, but they can only make do with what they have. They're basing it on the animated series, and that's all they had apparently. Chapter 7, you know what? I'm giving Chapter 7 a red alert as well, according to my notes, and let me find out why. Yes, Chapter 7 is about starships. Oh, just like the life path options, here are the new ships, or mostly new ships, you can add to your Star Trek Adventures game. You have the USS Enterprise from the year 2070. So the stats are different. Now I took a look. The stats from the original entry in the character pack, the TOS character pack, as well as the stats for the Enterprise in Utopia Planitia. These are different stats. The values are different, and there's also a difference in talent. There's, I believe, 1 different talent as well. So this is a different Enterprise. It was set up differently, and just like in the game, when you get your milestones and that, you could upgrade the ship, you can move points around the ship. It makes sense that they would adjust it for the kinds of mission they are going on. So this is an Enterprise prepped for the animated series era, so it will be a little bit different. There is the Harris Consolidated WW-1 inflatable decoy. I have not seen that episode. I want to see an inflatable starship. I don't know what to say about that, but again, interesting stuff. Some wacky stuff happened in the animated series. So there you go. You got inflatable decoy. There's the Aqua Shuttle Mark 1 for underwater. Stormbird class Romulan battle cruiser. Very cool. Nice entry and nice addition for the Romulan Empire. The IKS Divisor, or Divisor, I don't know. Trader's Claw, Kukul, I can say this, I promise you. Probably can't. Kukulkan Starship. I know I said that wrong. Imperial Aerospace Type 9-C, I'm guessing. And the Orion Orchid class. Now, I did see an episode of animated series, and I thought it was a completely different race, but as far as I can tell, it was the Orions, but they were calling them Orions. So somewhere between series, I think the pronunciation changed. So I'm guessing this is Orion, aka Orion ship. But there you go. I don't know. 70s, wild time, huh? Okay, stand down, red alert. Those are the new starships, or new-ish starships. A lot of stuff, a lot of new things to add to already established races, as well as some that have never been seen before and are pretty interesting if you read the stats and the entries on them. Chapter 8. Chapter 8 is Allies and Adversaries. So you get a lot of the famous NPCs that appear. I'm going to mess up most of these names too because I don't know them. There's Harcourt Fenton Mudd, who we all know. There's, I think, Ari Bin Bem. That is the Pandronian, the ones where their bodies are 3 different organisms and they split into 3 parts, again seen in lower decks. Robert April, who is now far, far more famous and well known thanks to Strange New Worlds. Sarah April, Thielen, Cyrano Jones, Char, Spock 2, there he is, the giant Spock. And according to one of the little sidebars in this guide, I think that the remains we saw in that episode Lower Deck were indeed that of the dearly departed Spock 2, aka Giant Spock. So rest in peace, Giant Spock. The Vendorian Winston, I believe, and Lucian. Another very interesting alien species, another interesting, powerful alien entity. So some of these are really, really cool to look at because of how wild a lot of the stories got in the animated series. So this might give you some new ideas that you never thought of before for alien species and just the different crazy types of entities that they brought into the animated series. I liked a lot of these and I want to use a lot of these species in my game now. I'm not going to go into more detail about that, but you know what? I will give a yellow alert for something. So, yellow alert. I noticed that some of these characters have some new talents that do not appear, or at least as far as I could see, have not appeared before in Star Trek Adventures. Others have talents that have a new name, but they are previously created and established talents. So they're just reskin talents to fit these characters. But there are some new ones, as far as I could tell, never saw them before. Some of them are pretty strong. Some of them are pretty wild too. So for the sake of completion, if you want to make sure you have every option available for you for character creation for the life path, you might want to check out this guide just to see some of these wild, I keep saying wild, but that's the only thought I had going through this guide. Some of the wild options of talents that are given to these NPCs. So that's my yellow alert. And here we go. Last one is Chapter 9. Chapter 9 is Creatures. Creatures, as you would expect, are the animals, the beasts, the bestiary of the animated series. There is the Capellan Power Cat. I believe I wrote that correctly. That sounds weird. The Cosmic Cloud, genetically engineered Tribble. Everyone knows those pink, purplish tribbles from the animated series. Glomer Lematia. Forgive me. The Retlaw Plant, the Rigelian Hypnoid Rock Creature, Salat, the Sur Snake, and a Swooper. Again, there's a lot of very interesting creatures, interesting beasts that you could pull from this to use in your game. And some are well known, even in the live action series. Some have been mentioned many, many times, but there are some that you will only see here in the animated series. It's worth it if you like having a wide, expansive menagerie of beasts to use for your game. There were some really cool entries in this chapter, so I might use them. I don't go into animals and beasts a lot, but I might use a couple of them because they just look too interesting to pass up. And that is the animated series supplemental guide. It's not a very long guide. It's only I think less than 70 pages, and a lot of them are like one-page stats or life path options of different characters and different species. So it's not a heavy guide to get through, but it does give you a lot of really fun, clever, and quirky options to throw into your Star Trek Adventures game, especially if you want to capture that feel of that really out there 70s animated series that thank God for it, keeping the spirit of Star Trek alive after the live action was canceled. And you even have the actors reprising their roles, doing the voices in the series. It is a continuation of Star Trek, and you could take that style, that flavor of that TOS era and continue it in your own games. I have not seen every episode of animated series, clearly with how I butchered all the names in here. But what I did see, I was impressed by. And I am going to eventually finish it. But this guide, reading through this guide, has given me more motivation to do that. Because I'm seeing things I haven't encountered yet. And I'm reading the entries on it. And I'm thinking, I want to see how that plays out in the story form. So if you're familiar with the anime series, you probably already know how you can use these. If you're not familiar, this might entice you to go back and give it a watch. It's been ignored for a long part of Star Trek's history, so I think now the 50th anniversary is time we go back and appreciate it and all the hard work they put into it. So check out this guide. There's a lot of fun stuff, not too expensive, not too long. I think you can pull a lot of fun stuff out of here, even if you're not going to be running a game in this era. There's plenty to use in any game that you are running. So very cool. I was happy. I was surprised. Didn't expect anything like this to come out. So very happy with what I saw. And I do recommend it as a fun little way to sprinkle some crazy into your game. So that's it. As always, thank you so much for watching. I hope this was informative and helpful for you. And we got a lot of stuff coming up, and I think I'm getting healthy again. That's why I haven't been making videos. I couldn't even talk, lost my voice for a while. But we got a lot of stuff coming up. I got a lot of things planned. Jeremy as well is working on a number of videos. So I hope you like what is on the way. But until next time, as always, live long and prosper. Peace and long life. Stay safe out there, my friends.